Hello and welcome to the Vailrun Tapes. Every story here is true. It happened to a real person, and they wrote it down or said it out loud, so the rest of us would know. Tonight, I'll share a few of them with you. A lot of you come back here every night, and that means a lot to me. These stories stay with people. That's just what they do. Before we start, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. I read all of them. And if you like these stories, a quick like and subscribe really help. Now get comfortable, take a slow breath, and let's begin.
After a coworker got engaged, a few of us sat around one day and started designing our dream engagement rings on a website. It was one of those harmless, girly, daydreaming moments that was not supposed to be serious in a stressful way. We were not demanding anything from anyone. We were just playing around, clicking through styles, looking at stones, settings, bands, shapes, and all the little details that make a ring feel personal. Someone getting engaged had put the idea in the air, and it became fun to imagine what each of us would choose if we could design the ring that felt most like us. I remember getting into it because I had always had a pretty clear idea of what I liked. I did not need something huge or flashy in the way some people assume when they hear dream engagement ring. I liked something elegant, feminine, and meaningful. I wanted a 1-carat pear-shaped diamond with a basket setting, and it came out to around $5,000, maybe because I preferred lab-grown diamonds. To me, lab-grown diamonds made sense. They were beautiful, more affordable than mined diamonds, and I did not feel like I needed the most expensive thing in the world just to prove love. I just wanted something that felt like me. Something I would look down at every day and think, this person knew me, listened to me, and wanted me to feel cherished. So I showed him my dream engagement ring. At the time, it felt normal. We had been together long enough that marriage was not some insane subject to bring up. It was not like I was showing a ring to someone I had been dating for 3 weeks. We were in a serious relationship. We had years behind us. We had talked about a future in different ways. So when I showed him the ring, I was not trying to trap him or pressure him into buying it the next day. I was sharing something personal and hopeful. I was showing him a small picture of the future I imagined with him. But for the entirety of our 3.5-year relationship, he would balk at the price. Anytime the subject came up, the cost was the problem. $5,000 was too much. The ring was too expensive. He acted like it was some unreasonable dream, like I was asking for a mansion, a luxury car, or something wildly beyond reality. He made it seem like the price itself was the issue, and because I loved him, I tried to understand. I told myself maybe he was practical. Maybe he was worried about money. Maybe he had financial stress I did not fully see. Maybe he thought engagement rings were overpriced in general. Maybe he was just the type of person who had a hard time spending that kind of money on jewelry. And because I had so little self-worth at the time, I kept shrinking my own feelings around it. I did not want to be the woman who seemed materialistic. I did not want to sound demanding, did not want to seem like I cared more about a ring than a marriage. I knew the ring was not the marriage. I knew love was supposed to matter more than jewelry. So I tried to make myself smaller. I tried to tell myself that maybe I should not care. Maybe wanting that specific ring made me shallow. Maybe I should be grateful for whatever he gave me, if he ever gave me anything at all. Maybe the important thing was that he loved me and the ring was just a symbol. But that was the problem. The ring was a symbol, and eventually I realized the symbol mattered because of what it revealed. Right before things ended, he let it slip that he had spent $9,000 in 6 months on car parts for his project car. $9,000. in 6 months. On car parts. I do not think I can fully explain what that did to me in the moment. It was like something inside me cracked. For years, he had acted like $5,000 for an engagement ring was this impossible, outrageous amount of money. He made me feel like I was asking for too much. He made me feel like my dream was unreasonable. He made me feel like I should be embarrassed for wanting something that beautiful and meaningful. But then he casually revealed that he had spent almost double that amount in half a year on a project car. That was when it stopped being about money. It was never that he did not have the cash. It was never that the price was impossible. It was never that he could not save, or that spending thousands of dollars was against his values, or that he was too financially cautious to put that much money towards something. He could spend money. He could spend a lot of money. He could spend $9,000 in 6 months when it was something he cared about. He just did not care enough about making me happy. That realization broke my heart, because putting a ring on my finger for the rest of our lives did not hold as much value to him as car parts. A symbol of commitment, a piece of jewelry I would wear every day, something tied to our future, our marriage, and the life we were supposedly building together, was not worth $5,000 to him. But parts for a project car were worth $9,000. He could justify that. He could make room for that. He could find the money for that. He could be excited about that. But not me, not us, not the promise of forever. The pain was not because I believed love had to be measured in dollars. It was because I had spent years believing his hesitation came from practical limits when the truth was about priority. He showed me, without meaning to, exactly where I stood. His car mattered. His hobbies mattered. His wants mattered. His excitement mattered. His future with a vehicle mattered more than his future with me. He could invest in what made him happy. But when it came to something that would make me feel loved, chosen, and valued, suddenly the cost was too much. That is a very specific kind of heartbreak. It is not loud at first. It is quiet and sinking. You start replaying every conversation in your head. Every time he made a face at the price. Every time he acted like I was asking for too much. Every time I defended him in my own mind. Every time I lowered my expectations so I would not seem difficult. Every time I thought, maybe someday. And then you realize he was never incapable. He was unwilling. There is a difference between a man who cannot and a man who will not. I had been treating him like he could not. I had been giving him grace, patience, and understanding as if the issue was circumstance. But it was not circumstance. It was choice. He chose what mattered to him, and I was not high on that list. Looking back, his disdain for me was fairly obvious. I hate admitting that, but it is true. It was there in the way he dismissed things that mattered to me. It was there in the way he made my wants feel excessive. It was there in the way he could spend freely on himself, but made me feel guilty for wanting something connected to our future. It was there in the way he did not light up at the thought of marrying me. It was there in the way I always seemed to be waiting for him to decide I was worth choosing, but I was too blinded by how much I loved him and by how little self-worth I had. That combination can make you accept things you would warn any friend to run from. Love can make you patient, but low self-worth makes you over-patient. It makes you explain away things that are actually very clear. It makes you take crumbs and call them effort. It makes you believe that if you are understanding enough, supportive enough, cool enough, low maintenance enough, then maybe he will finally value you the way you value him. It makes you think your needs are the problem instead of his lack of care. I loved him so much that I kept trying to see him in the best possible light. I wanted to believe he was building towards something with me. I wanted to believe that the reluctance was about timing, money, pressure, or fear. I wanted to believe that deep down, he wanted the same life I wanted. I wanted to believe that if I stayed patient, eventually he would choose me proudly. But love cannot make someone value you when they do not want to. The ring was never just a ring. It was a test he probably did not even know he was taking. Not a test of whether he could afford a perfect diamond, but a test of whether my happiness mattered enough for him to plan, save, and care. A man who truly wanted to marry me would not have made me feel stupid for having a dream ring. He might have said, "That exact one is a little high right now, but I want to get as close as I can." He might have saved over time. He might have asked what details mattered most. He might have found a beautiful lab-grown, pear-shaped diamond in a similar setting. He might have made me feel like my dream was something he wanted to honor, not something he wanted to mock or avoid. But he did not do that. He balked. He resisted. He acted like the price was the problem. And then he proved the price was not the problem by spending even more on himself. That is when the truth became impossible to ignore. It was not about whether $5,000 was a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I understand that. But $9,000 is also a lot of money. He had shown he was capable of spending big when it served him. So the question became painfully simple. Why was his project car worth that investment, but our future was not? Why was his hobby worth that kind of sacrifice, but my joy was not? Why could he pour money into something he wanted, while making me feel unreasonable for wanting a symbol of commitment? The answer hurt, because it was obvious. He did not think my happiness was worth spending it on. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. It changes every memory. Suddenly, the issue is not the ring anymore. It becomes all the other places where he probably did the same thing. How many times did I accept less because I thought he was doing his best? How many times did I make myself easy to love because I was afraid needing more would push him away? How many times did I confuse his lack of effort with practicality? How many times did I tell myself that a future with him would be enough, even when he was showing me that he was not actually building one with me? That is the painful part about realizing someone never valued you properly. You grieve the relationship, but you also grieve the version of yourself who stayed. You feel sad for the woman who kept hoping. You feel angry for her, too. You want to go back and shake her gently and say, "Look at what he is showing you." Stop listening to the excuses. Stop trying to be chosen by someone who is choosing everything else first. But at the time, you do not see it clearly because you are inside it. You are attached to the dream. You are attached to the version of him you believe exists. You are attached to the hope that one day he will finally understand your worth. I had wife material written all over me. I know that now. I was loving. I was loyal. I was supportive. I was willing to build. I was thinking about a future, not just a wedding. I was not asking for perfection. I was not asking for a billionaire lifestyle. I was asking to be valued by the person I wanted to spend my life with. I was asking him to care about something that mattered to me because I mattered to him. But you can have wife material written all over you, and it does not matter if you choose a man who cannot read. That sentence says everything. Because the problem was never that I was not enough. The problem was that I was standing in front of someone who could not recognize what he had. Or maybe he could recognize it, and he simply did not value it. Either way, the result was the same. I could have been loyal, kind, patient, supportive, and ready for a future. But if he was not the kind of man who could appreciate that, then none of it would have changed him. A man who cannot read your value will treat your love like background noise. He will benefit from your support, but not honor it. He will enjoy your presence, but not commit to you properly. He will let you dream about forever while he spends his money, energy, and excitement elsewhere. He will make you feel expensive when you ask for something meaningful, while freely investing in things that only serve him. And if you do not know your own worth, you may stay too long trying to prove something that should have been obvious. I wish I had understood sooner that I did not need to convince him I was worth it. I did not need to make a case for why my happiness mattered. I did not need to compete with a car, a hobby, or anything else for basic consideration. A man who wants to marry you does not make you feel like your dream ring is a burden for 3.5 years, while secretly spending far more on himself. A man who sees you as his future does not treat the symbol of that future like an annoying expense. He showed me what he valued. I just did not want to believe it. Now, looking back, I can see that the ring was one of the clearest signs. Not because the ring itself was the most important thing, but because of what his response revealed. If he had truly wanted a life with me, he would have cared that I had shown him something so personal. He would have remembered the pear shape, the basket, the lab-grown diamond, the details that made it mine. He would have wanted to see my face when I opened the box. He would have understood that the joy was not about showing off to other people. It was about feeling chosen by him. Instead, he made me feel like wanting that made me too much. Then he spent $9,000 on car parts. That was the moment the illusion shattered. I could no longer pretend it was about money. I could no longer pretend he was just being practical. I could no longer pretend my dream was too expensive when his dream had already cost more. The truth was sitting right there in front of me, ugly but clear. He had the cash, he had the ability, he had the willingness to spend. He just did not have the desire to spend it on a future with me. And yes, that broke my heart. But it also gave me clarity. Because I do not want to spend my life with someone who has to be convinced that my happiness matters. I do not want to be with someone who sees my dreams as a burden while treating his own wants as necessities. I do not want to shrink myself into someone cheaper, quieter, easier, and less hopeful just so a man can feel comfortable giving me less than I deserve. I wanted a ring that represented love, commitment, and a future. He wanted car parts, and in the end, he made his choice very clear. It was never about the diamond. It was never about the price tag. It was never about being spoiled or materialistic. It was about priority. It was about love. It was about whether he could look at me and think, her happiness matters to me, and he could not, or he would not. That truth hurt, but it also set me free from the lie I had been telling myself. I was not asking for too much. I was asking the wrong man. After our daughter was past the daddy's little girl stage, things started to change in a way I could not ignore. When she was very young, he seemed to enjoy the idea of being her dad. He liked the cute parts, the easy praise, the little moments where she adored him without question. When she was small enough to run to him, hug him, and look at him like he was the whole world, he seemed comfortable with that. It made him feel important. It made him feel loved without him having to do much emotional work. She was little, sweet, and easy to impress, and I think he enjoyed being seen as the fun or special parent during that stage. But children grow. They stop being tiny versions of themselves who worship adults just because they are adults. They start becoming real people with opinions, habits, moods, needs, and personalities. They become more complicated. They test limits. They get frustrated. They talk back sometimes. They make noise. They forget things. They ask questions at the wrong time. They have emotions that are inconvenient. They become less like a cute little accessory and more like a person who needs patience, guidance, and love, even when they are not being easy. That was when his attitude toward her became harder to watch. Once she grew out of that daddy's little girl stage, he started complaining about her more. I am not saying parents never get frustrated with their kids. Of course they do. Kids can be irritating. They can be loud, messy, stubborn, dramatic, forgetful, and exhausting. Every parent has moments where they need to vent about normal kid behavior, like the same toy being left in the hallway again, or a child whining over dinner, or someone forgetting homework, or an argument over bedtime. That is normal. Parenting is hard, and sometimes children do things that test every bit of patience you have. But this was different. When he complained about her, and it was not about some normal annoying thing kids do, there was a good chance he was really complaining about me. Not directly, not always in words that said my name, but I could hear it. He would complain about a behavior she had, a way she reacted, a personality trait, or some little part of who she was, and I would realize he was angry because it reminded him of me. It was like every part of her that came from me was something he could not stand. That is a strange and painful thing to notice as a mother. You look at your child and see pieces of yourself in them, and usually that is beautiful. Maybe they laugh like you. Maybe they get quiet when they are thinking. Maybe they have your stubbornness, your sensitivity, your sense of humor, your way of noticing small details, your emotional reactions, your face, your expressions, or even your flaws. Children carry pieces of both parents. That is just how it is. Sometimes it is physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes in little habits that make you stop and think, wow, that is me. But instead of seeing those pieces of me in her with any kind of tenderness, he seemed to resent them. If she was sensitive, he would act like she was being too dramatic, and I could hear the old criticism he had for me underneath it. If she was stubborn, he would complain like it was some personal attack, and I knew he hated that same stubbornness in me. If she questioned something, he acted like she was being difficult, just like he used to act when I questioned him. If she had a strong opinion, he treated it like disrespect. If she got emotional, he treated it like manipulation. If she needed reassurance, he treated it like weakness. And every time, it felt like he was punishing her for being connected to me. The first few times, I tried to tell myself I was reading too much into it. I thought maybe I was being sensitive because of the problems between us. When you have a difficult relationship with someone, you sometimes second-guess your own reactions. You wonder if you are being unfair, if you are projecting, if you are hearing old arguments in places where they do not belong. So, at first, I tried not to jump to conclusions. I would remind myself that parents get annoyed. I would tell myself that maybe he was just tired, stressed, or frustrated, but the pattern kept showing itself. The things that bothered him most about her were almost always things he had criticized in me. It was not only what he said, it was the tone. It was the way his face changed. It was the kind of contempt that came through, even when he tried to make it sound like normal parenting. There is a huge difference between saying, she needs to learn to clean up after herself, and saying it like her whole personality is a problem. There is a difference between guiding a child and judging them. There is a difference between correcting behavior and attacking who they are. He often crossed that line. I hated it because she was just a child. She was still learning who she was. She did not deserve to be looked at through the lens of his bitterness toward me. She did not deserve to have her personality picked apart because it reminded him of his wife or ex-wife or whatever I was to him at that point. She was not responsible for our problems. She was not responsible for his resentment. She was not responsible for the parts of herself she inherited. She was just trying to grow up. And I knew how damaging that kind of criticism could be. I knew what it felt like to be around someone who made you feel like your normal reactions were wrong, your feelings were too much, your thoughts were annoying, or your presence was irritating. I knew what it did to a person over time. It makes you shrink. It makes you hesitate before speaking. It makes you apologize for things that are not wrong. It makes you monitor yourself constantly, trying not to trigger another complaint. I did not want that for my daughter. I wanted her to feel loved as herself, not only when she was cute, quiet, agreeable, and easy. I wanted her to know she could have feelings without being called dramatic. I wanted her to know she could ask questions without being treated like she was challenging someone's authority. I wanted her to know she could be strong without being called difficult. I wanted her to know that the traits she got from me were not automatically bad just because he had decided they were. That was the part that hurt the most. He was not just complaining about her. He was teaching her, slowly and quietly, that the parts of her that came from me were flaws. He may not have said it exactly like that, but children understand more than people think. They know when a parent is disappointed in them. They know when a parent is irritated by their personality, not just their behavior. They know when love feels conditional. They may not have the words for it yet, but they feel it. And because she was our daughter, it cut even deeper. A child should never have to feel like one half of who they are is something a parent dislikes. She came from both of us. If he hated the parts of her that looked like me, sounded like me, reacted like me, or felt like me, then what message did that send her? That she had to reject part of herself to be loved by him? That she had to become less like her mother to be acceptable? That she had to hide the things he found irritating? I started noticing myself becoming more protective. When he complained, I would listen closely. Was this about a real behavior that needed correction, or was he turning her personality into a problem? Was he parenting, or was he taking out old resentment? Sometimes I wanted to step in immediately. Sometimes I did. Other times I felt stuck, trying to balance not escalating things while also making sure my daughter did not absorb his cruelty as truth. It is difficult when the criticism is not always obvious to outsiders. If someone had heard him say one comment, they might have thought, well, he is just annoyed. All parents complain. But they would not have the full history. They would not know that he had said the same things about me for years. They would not hear the echo. They would not understand that when he said she was too sensitive, I heard every time he dismissed my pain. When he said she was stubborn, I heard every time he hated that I would not simply give in. When he said she was dramatic, I heard every time he refused to take my feelings seriously. When he said she was just like you, I knew it was not a compliment. Those words, just like you, can be sweet from the right person. They can mean she has your heart, your humor, your strength, your kindness. But from him, it felt like an accusation. It sounded like he was saying, she has the parts of you I never liked, and now I have to deal with them in her too. No child deserves that. There were times I looked at my daughter and felt this mix of pride and sadness. Pride because I loved those things in her. I loved her spark. I loved her mind. I loved her sensitivity, even when it made life harder, because it meant she cared deeply. I loved her stubbornness because it meant she had a backbone. I loved that she questioned things because it meant she was thinking. I loved that she had strong feelings because it meant she was alive and human, not some quiet little doll made to please everyone. But I felt sadness because I knew he did not see it that way. He saw inconvenience, he saw defiance, he saw echoes of me. And instead of learning to love her as she grew into herself, he seemed annoyed that she was no longer the tiny girl who adored him without resistance. The older she got, the more she needed him to show real patience and real emotional maturity, and the more he failed at it. The daddy's little girl stage had been easy for him because it gave him admirations without challenge. But when she became her own person, he did not seem to know what to do with her. Or maybe he simply did not want to do the work. It is easy to love a child when they are making you feel important. It is harder to love them well when they are tired, moody, independent, or honest. But that is the real job. That is parenting. You do not get to only love the cute stage and then resent the person they become. I also think he hated that she and I had a connection he could not control. There is a bond between a mother and child that can make insecure people feel threatened. I was not trying to take anything from him. I was not trying to turn her against him. I wanted her to have a good relationship with her father, but he seemed to see love like a competition. If she was close to me, if she acted like me, if she trusted me, or if I understood her in ways he did not, he seemed to resent it. Instead of building his own healthy connection with her, he complained. That became another pattern. Instead of asking why she felt a certain way, he judged the feeling. Instead of trying to understand her, he labeled her. Instead of seeing her as a child still developing, he acted like her traits were permanent flaws. And when those traits reminded him of me, he seemed even harsher. Over time, I realized how unfair it was, not only to me but to her. Whatever problems he had with me should have stayed with me. A child should never become the place where a parent deposits resentment toward the other parent. She should never have had to carry the weight of his anger at me. If he did not like me, that was between us. But she was innocent. She was not a copy of me created to annoy him. She was her own person, made up of many things, and she deserved to be loved fully. I wish he had been able to see that. I wish he had looked at her and seen the beauty in the traits he criticized. I wish he had understood that sensitivity is not weakness, that stubbornness can become strength, that questions can become intelligence, that emotional honesty can become courage. I wish he had cared enough to separate his feelings about me from his relationship with her, but he did not. And because he did not, I had to make sure she heard a different message from me. I had to remind her, in words and in actions, that she was not too much. She was not wrong for having feelings. She was not bad for being strong-willed. She was not difficult for being herself. She did not have to become smaller to be loved. The parts of her that came from me were not curses. They were simply parts of her, and many of them were beautiful. I still think about how sad it is when a parent only enjoys a child while the child is small enough to make them feel adored. Children are not meant to stay in that stage forever. They grow, they change, they become complicated, and they deserve parents who grow with them. They deserve love that can handle their personality, not just their cuteness. They deserve correction without contempt, boundaries without cruelty, and guidance without being made to feel like their whole character is a problem. After our daughter was past the daddy's little girl stage, his complaints changed the way I saw him as a father. It was not just normal frustration. It was not just the usual irritation that comes with raising kids. Too often, when he complained about her, He was really complaining about something in her that reminded him of me. And every time I noticed it, it made me feel protective, angry, and sad all at once. Because she was not me. She was our daughter. She was a child. She deserved better than being judged for the parts of herself she inherited. She deserved a father who could love her through every stage, not just the stage that fed his ego. And she deserved to know that being like her mother in some ways was not something to be ashamed of. It was not a flaw. It was not a reason for him to pull away or criticize her. It was just part of who she was, and who she was deserved love. He cheated on me constantly. It was not one mistake, not one moment of weakness, and not one situation where someone could say things got complicated. It was constant. It was a pattern. It was who he was in the relationship. He lied, he hid things, he betrayed me, and he still somehow found ways to act like I was the problem. That is the part that is so hard to explain to people who have not been with someone like that. It is not just the cheating that destroys you. It is the way they cheat and then make you question your own reality. It is the way they hurt you, then stand there acting offended when you react. It is the way they create chaos and then expect you to carry the blame for it. For a long time, I was stuck in that cycle. He would do things that made me feel unsafe emotionally, and then he would twist everything around until I was the one defending myself. He had a way of making me feel like I had to prove I was loyal, prove I was honest, prove I was not imagining things, prove I was not overreacting. Meanwhile, he was the one sneaking around. He was the one constantly stepping outside the relationship. He was the one putting himself first over and over again. But somehow, every problem became something I had to explain, fix, or apologize for. When someone cheats constantly, the damage builds slowly at first, then all at once. At first, you might catch something small, a message, a lie that does not add up, a sudden change in behavior, a strange excuse, a name that keeps appearing. You tell yourself maybe it is not what it looks like because your mind does not want to accept that someone you love could be doing that to you. Then more things happen. More lies show up. More stories fall apart. You start living with that sick feeling in your stomach. The feeling that something is wrong even when you do not have proof in your hand. Eventually, you stop feeling safe in your own relationship. You stop trusting normal moments. If his phone lights up, your body reacts. If he is late, your mind starts running. And if he becomes too sweet, you wonder what he is covering up. If he becomes cold, you wonder who else has his attention. That is what constant cheating does. It turns love into a place where you are always waiting for the next hurt. You are not just dealing with one betrayal. You are living inside betrayal. But even after all of that, there are some lines you never imagine a person crossing. You might think someone is selfish. You might think they are weak. You might think they are a liar. But you still do not expect them to gamble with your health and then try to blame you for it. That was what happened when it came time for him to tell me he had been exposed to HIV because of one of his reckless choices. He knew. That is the part I cannot get past. He knew he had been exposed. He knew there was a risk. He knew this was not something small or casual or something that could wait until he felt like talking about it. This was serious. This was my health. This was my body. This was my future. This was information I had every to know immediately. But instead of telling me right away, he waited long enough to expose me too. There is a special kind of betrayal in that. Cheating is already a violation of trust, but this was beyond that. He took away my ability to protect myself. He made decisions about my body without my consent. He knew something that could affect my life, and he kept it from me while still allowing me to be at risk. That is not just lying. That is cruelty. That's selfishness at a level that is hard to even put into words. When I found out, I felt like the world dropped out from under me. It was not only heartbreak, it was fear, real fear, the kind that settles deep in your bones, the kind that makes your hands shake and your mind race. I had to think about testing, waiting, results, and all the possibilities I did not ask for. I had to sit with the knowledge that the person who was supposed to love me had put me in that position. I had to face the reality that my health had been put at risk because he could not stop cheating and could not even be honest when it mattered most. And then, as if that was not evil enough, he tried to convince me that I had infected him. He tried to make me believe I was the one cheating on him. He tried to take his exposure, his choices, his betrayal, and put it on me. That still makes me angry because it was so twisted. He had been cheating constantly. He was the one who had been careless. He was the one who had been exposed because of his own actions. And yet he stood there, trying to turn the story around, trying to make me the guilty one. That kind of manipulation does something to your mind. Even when you know the truth, the fact that someone can lie with that much confidence is disturbing. He was not simply denying what he had done. He was trying to rewrite reality. He wanted me to doubt myself. He wanted me scared enough, shocked enough, and emotionally broken enough that I might accept his version of events. He wanted to use my fear against me. It is hard to explain how cruel that is unless you have lived through it. When you are already terrified about your health, already trying to understand what has happened, already dealing with the pain of betrayal, the last thing you need is the person responsible pointing at you and saying it was your fault. But that is what people like him do. They hurt you. And when the damage becomes too obvious to hide, they blame you for bleeding. He wanted me to carry the shame that belonged to him. He wanted me to defend my loyalty while he avoided answering for his own. He wanted the conversation to shift from what he had done to what he could accuse me of. That was his way of escaping responsibility. If he could make me panic, if he could make me angry, if he could make me start proving I had not cheated, then maybe he would not have to face the truth that he had exposed me through his own betrayal. But I knew, deep down, I knew. I knew who had been cheating. I knew who had been lying. I knew who had put me at risk. I knew I had not done what he was accusing me of. Still, knowing the truth does not make the situation painless. It does not stop the fear. It does not erase the shock of hearing someone try to blame you for something they caused. For a while, everything felt poisoned by it. My body did not feel like my own safe place anymore. I had to go through testing and waiting because of him. Anyone who has ever waited for medical results after a possible exposure knows how long those days can feel. Time moves differently. Every small symptom becomes something your mind tries to connect. Every moment of calm gets interrupted by a thought that makes your chest tighten. You tell yourself to breathe, but your body does not fully believe it is safe yet, and the emotional side of it was just as heavy. I was not only afraid of the medical results, I was grieving the fact that someone had treated me like I did not matter. Someone who claimed to love me had known there was a risk and still waited. He had let me be exposed because his comfort, his denial, or his ability to control the story mattered more to him than my safety. That kind of realization stays with you. When you are with someone like that, you start to understand that they do not love in the way you thought love worked. They may want you, they may need you, they may enjoy what you provide, they may like having you around. But love, real love, does not look like that. Real love does not hide life-changing information. Real love does not put your health at risk and then accuse you of causing it. Real love does not cheat constantly and then act like the victim. Real love protects. Real love is honest, especially when honesty is hard. He did not protect me. He protected himself. He protected his lies. He protected his image. He protected his ability to keep doing whatever he wanted. And when the truth threatened to come out, he tried to use me as a shield. 5 years later, I am still HIV negative. I am grateful for that in a way I cannot fully express. Every negative result felt like being handed back a piece of my life. It did not erase what happened, but it meant he did not get to leave that permanent mark on my body. He had already left enough damage in my mind and heart. He had already taken enough peace from me, but he did not get to take that. Still, being negative does not mean it was harmless. Sometimes people hear the ending and think, well, you are okay now. But that is not how it works. The fear was real. The exposure was real. The waiting was real. The betrayal was real. The way he tried to blame me was real. The fact that the worst medical outcome did not happen does not make his actions any less cruel. It does not make those years of fear disappear. It does not make it acceptable. I had to heal from more than just a cheating partner. I had to heal from being manipulated so deeply that my own truth was questioned. I had to heal from being blamed for his betrayal. I had to heal from the fear that he might have changed my life forever. I had to rebuild trust not only in other people, but in myself. Because after a relationship like that, you wonder how you let someone like him get close. You wonder how long you ignored signs. You wonder why you stayed through things that should have sent you running. But with time I learned that his choices were not my fault. His cheating was not my fault. His exposure was not my fault. His lies were not my fault. His attempt to blame me was not proof of my guilt. It was proof of his character. And then, after all of that, I found the man of my dreams. I do not say that lightly. After someone like my ex, love can feel dangerous. Trust can feel foolish. Protection can feel like a word people use until it becomes inconvenient. I had been with someone who used love as a cover for selfishness, so it took time for me to understand what real love could feel like. But the man I found after him showed me something completely different. He protects me. Not in a controlling way, not in a way that makes me feel small, but in the way a true partner protects your peace, your body, your heart, and your dignity. He makes me feel safe. That alone is something I once did not know if I would ever feel again. With him, I do not have to live in suspicion. I do not have to fight for basic honesty. I do not have to defend myself against accusations that are really confessions. I do not have to beg for respect. I do not have to wonder if he is putting me at risk behind my back. He shows up with care. He thinks about how his actions affect me. He understands that love is not just words. It is protection. It is respect. It is consistency. It is truth. After what I went through, being protected feels like a miracle. It feels like breathing after years of holding my breath. It feels like finally being able to rest my nervous system. It feels like being loved by someone who does not need to hurt me to feel powerful. I know now that I was never asking for too much. I was asking the wrong person. I wanted loyalty, honesty, safety, and respect. Those are not impossible standards. They are the bare minimum in a loving relationship. My ex tried to make me believe I was the problem. He cheated constantly, exposed me to fear, waited too long to tell me about HIV exposure, and then tried to convince me I was the one who had infected him. That was not love. That was abuse, manipulation, and cowardice. He wanted me to carry the blame for his own reckless life, but he failed. 5 years later, I am still HIV negative. I know the truth. I survived the fear. I survived the lies. I survived the attempt to make me question myself. And after all of that, I found someone who actually protects me, someone who makes me feel safe instead of scared, someone who reminds me that love is not supposed to feel like danger. He tried to destroy my trust, but he did not get to keep the rest of my life. He tried to make me the villain, but the truth stayed with me. He tried to expose me to his consequences, but I came through it. And now I am loved by someone who would never treat my safety like an afterthought. That is the part I hold on to now. Not him, not his lies, not his accusations, not the fear he caused. I hold on to the fact that I made it out. I hold on to the fact that I am still here, still healthy, still capable of being loved properly. And I hold on to the man I found afterward, the one who protects me, because he showed me that the love I deserved was never too much to ask for. He left me downtown in a city after a night out. I was drunk, tired, and not in the best state to be making decisions for myself. And he still somehow thought it was okay to leave me there. We had gone out together, so, in my mind, we were supposed to leave together too. That is what you do when you are with someone, especially someone you have been with for years. You look out for each other. You make sure the other person gets home safely. You do not just decide that getting food is more important and leave your girlfriend standing alone in the middle of the city at night. It started after we had been out drinking. It was one of those nights where everything seems fine until suddenly it is not. We were downtown, and the night was probably winding down. I was drunk enough that I should not have been left alone. I was wearing heels, which already made walking around uncomfortable, especially after being out for hours. My feet hurt, I was tired, and I was probably just ready to get home, or at least get somewhere safe. But instead of thinking about me, he decided to leave with his best friend on a Lime scooter. I do not remember every little detail perfectly, because I had been drinking, but I remember the important part clearly. He and his best friend got a scooter, and I could not get one too. Maybe I did not have the app. Maybe my phone was dead. Maybe it was something like that. Whatever the exact reason was, I could not just hop on another scooter and follow them. That should have been the moment where a normal boyfriend would say, "Okay." Then we are not doing that. We will walk together, call a ride, or figure something else out. That is the kind of basic care you expect from someone who claims to love you. But he did not do that. Instead, he got on the scooter with his best friend and left me behind so they could go get food. They just went. Like I was not standing there. Like it did not matter that I was drunk. Like it did not matter that it was late. Like it did not matter that I was downtown in a city and not somewhere familiar and safe. They rode away, and I was left there alone, trying to process what had just happened. It is hard to describe how it feels when someone you love leaves you in a vulnerable situation and does not even seem to understand that it is wrong. At first, there is confusion. You almost do not believe it. You think, wait, are they really leaving? Are they joking? Are they coming back? Did I miss something? You stand there for a second trying to make sense of it because your brain does not want to accept that your own boyfriend would just leave you like that. But then the seconds pass and they do not come back. The confusion turns into hurt. Then the hurt turns into fear. I was drunk and alone downtown at night. I was in heels. I had to figure out how to get home by myself. That is not a small thing. That is not me being dramatic. That is a situation that could have gone badly in so many ways. Women are told our whole lives to be careful, to watch our drinks, to stay with friends, to not walk alone at night, to text someone when we get home, to carry our keys a certain way, to pay attention to who is behind us, to never look too drunk, to never seem too lost. We are taught to think about safety. And my boyfriend, the person who was supposed to care about me, put me in the exact situation women are always warned about. I had to walk home alone, in heels, drunk, downtown, after a night out. That walk must have felt endless. Every step probably hurt. Every street probably felt longer than it was. When you are drunk and upset, everything becomes heavier. Your body feels unsteady. Your thoughts race. You are trying to stay aware of your surroundings, but you are also fighting tears, anger, and disbelief. You are trying to look like you know where you are going, even when you feel abandoned. You are trying to get home safely while also realizing that the person who should have cared most did not care enough to make sure you were okay. The worst part was not only that he left me. The worst part was how he acted afterward. When I was upset, he acted confused. He acted like he genuinely did not understand why I was angry. That almost made it worse. If he had admitted right away that he messed up, if he had said, "I am so sorry, I was selfish, I should never have left you," it still would have hurt. But at least there would have been some recognition of what he had done. Instead, he treated my reaction like it was the strange part. He acted like I was being unreasonable for expecting him not to abandon me downtown while I was drunk. That kind of response makes you feel crazy. You start explaining something that should not need to be explained. You find yourself saying things like, "You left me alone," and "I was drunk," and "I had to walk home in heels," and "anything could have happened to me." And somehow the other person still looks at you like they do not get it. It makes you wonder if they are really confused or if they just do not want to accept responsibility. Either way, it is exhausting. You are already hurt, and now you have to teach a grown man basic empathy. He refused to apologize, not only in the moment, but even after I broke up with him. That is what still stands out to me. He had every chance to think about it. He had time to replay the situation in his head. He had time to realize how dangerous and careless it was. He had time to understand that he left his girlfriend alone downtown while she was drunk and vulnerable. But even with all that time, he still would not say sorry. He dug in. He acted like my feelings were the problem instead of his actions. That refusal told me so much about him. Sometimes the original mistake is bad, but the reaction afterward tells you who a person really is. People mess up. People make selfish choices. People do dumb things when they are drunk. But when someone refuses to apologize after hurting you, that is not just a mistake anymore. That is pride. That is disrespect. That is a person choosing their ego over your pain. He did not care enough to protect me that night, and then he did not care enough to acknowledge the harm afterward. This was not some random guy I had been seeing for a few weeks. This was someone I had been with for 6 years. 6 years is not nothing. 6 years is a huge part of your life. It is routines, memories, inside jokes, holidays, arguments, birthdays, plans, and all the ordinary days in between. 6 years means you have built a whole world around someone. You have adjusted your life to include them. You have probably imagined some kind of future with them, even if it was not perfect. You think 6 years should mean something. You think after that much time, there should be care, loyalty, and at least the basic instinct to not leave your partner alone in a dangerous situation. But that night made me see something clearly. Maybe I had been giving him credit for feelings he did not really have. Maybe I had been assuming depth where there was only convenience. Maybe I had been holding on to the length of the relationship because 6 years felt too important to throw away, even though his actions showed me how little he valued me. It is painful when one incident suddenly shines a light on the whole relationship. You start looking backward and asking yourself how many other times you ignored signs. How many other times did he make you feel unimportant? How many other times did he act like your feelings were an inconvenience? How many other times did he refuse to apologize because admitting fault mattered less to him than keeping control? The breakup conversation only confirmed what I had already started to understand. When we talked about ending our 6-year relationship, I expected more from him. I do not even know exactly what I expected. Maybe grief, maybe regret, maybe anger, maybe some honest reflection, maybe even a real apology after everything. After 6 years, you expect the other person to have something meaningful to say. Even if the relationship is over, you want to believe it mattered. You want to believe you mattered. You want to hear that the years were real, that the love was real at some point, that there was something there beyond comfort and habit. But all he could say about our 6 years together was, "You're nice to be around, I guess." That sentence was so empty, it almost hurt more than an insult. It was not passionate. It was not sad. It was not loving. It was not even angry enough to show that he cared. It was just nothing. "You're nice to be around, I guess." Like I was a coworker he did not mind sitting near. Like I was a neighbor who was polite in the hallway. Like I was a decent background presence in his life, not the person who had spent 6 years loving him. Not the person who had shared time, energy, loyalty, and pieces of herself with him. There is something deeply humiliating about realizing that you gave someone years of your life. And when it is all ending, the best they can say is that you were nice to be around. It makes you feel like you were never truly seen. You were convenient, you were pleasant, you were there, but you were not cherished. You were not protected. You were not valued in the way you deserved. You were just someone he had gotten used to having around. That sentence probably echoed in my head for a long time. It summed up everything. The scooter, the downtown street, the heels, the drunk walk home, the refusal to apologize, all of it. He was not acting like someone who had accidentally made one bad choice. He was acting like someone who had never really understood the weight of being responsible with another person's heart or safety. He had treated me like I was optional that night, and during the breakup, he described me like I had been optional for years. I think that is why the whole thing hurt so deeply. It was not only about the night itself, even though that night was terrible. It was about what that night revealed. It showed me that when it came down to it, he would choose himself first. He would choose food, convenience, his friend, and a scooter before choosing to make sure I got home safely. Then, when faced with the consequences, he would choose pride before accountability. And when asked to look back on 6 years together, he could barely find words that made me feel human. It is one thing for a relationship to end because two people grow apart. It is another thing for it to end because you realize the person beside you does not have the kind of care for you that you thought they had. That is a different kind of heartbreak. It makes you question not only the ending, but the whole story. Were the good moments real? Did he ever love me the way I loved him? Was he always this detached, and I just did not want to see it? Did I spend 6 years trying to build a relationship with someone who only liked me because I was easy to have around? The more I thought about it, the more I understood that breaking up with him was the right choice. Because a partner who leaves you drunk and alone downtown at night is not a partner you can trust. A partner who refuses to apologize after putting you in danger is not someone who respects you. A partner who can only describe 6 years of love as nice to be around, I guess, is not someone who deserves more years of your life. I deserved someone who would have stayed with me. I deserved someone who would have noticed I could not get a scooter and immediately changed the plan. I deserved someone who would have said, "We came together, so we are leaving together." I deserved someone who would have cared more about my safety than late-night food. I deserved someone who would have apologized the moment he realized I was hurt. I deserved someone who could look back on 6 years and speak with honesty, warmth, and respect. Instead, I got abandoned downtown, drunk and alone, and then treated like I was unreasonable for being upset about it. I had to walk home in heels while he went off without me. Then, even after the relationship ended, he still refused to admit he had done anything wrong. And when it was time to say something meaningful about everything we had been through, all he could come up with was, "You're nice to be around, I guess." That was when I really understood how little he had been giving me. Not because I was not worth more, but because he was not capable of more. He showed me who he was that night, and then he confirmed it in the breakup. It hurt, but at least it made the truth impossible to ignore.
Quick interruption. I'll keep it short. A lot of people pass through here once and never come back. But the ones who hit subscribe, they're the regulars now. The ones who show up every single night without fail. If you'd like to be one of them, the button's right there. Turn the bell on too, and you'll never have to wonder when the next one drops. That's everything. Story's still going. Let's get back to it.
He mocked me for working remote while he had to go to work. That was one of those things that sounds small when you say it quickly, but when you live with it every day, it starts to wear you down. It was not just one joke or one bad comment after a long day. It was the tone, the little jabs, the way he acted like my work was not real work because I could do it from home. He would come home with this attitude, like he had been out in the real world doing something important while I had just been sitting around doing nothing. It did not matter that I had responsibilities, deadlines, meetings, tasks, stress, and actual work to get done. In his mind, if I was not leaving the house in work boots or coming home dirty and exhausted, then somehow my job did not count. He was a plumber, or at least he worked as one, but he was unlicensed, and honestly, he probably still is. He acted like his work made him more serious, more hardworking, more practical, and more deserving of respect. I never looked down on him for working with his hands. I actually think skilled trades are important, and people who do that kind of work can be incredibly talented. That was never the issue. The issue was that he used his job as a way to look down on mine. He treated remote work like it was some kind of scam or lazy shortcut, even though I was making real money and carrying real responsibilities. It was like he could not stand the fact that I did not have to suffer in the same exact way he did. If he had to wake up, leave the house, deal with job sites, and come back tired, then he wanted me to have to do that too. If I got to work from a desk or from home, he saw it as unfair, not as something I had earned. He did not see the education, skills, experience, or effort behind it. He only saw the comfort and decided that comfort meant I was spoiled. He acted like, because my work looked different from his, it must have been easier, softer, or less valid. And the really strange part was that I made more money than him. You would think that would make him respect my work more, but it did the opposite. He made little jabs about money too. Nothing huge at first, just small comments that were designed to get under my skin. He would say things in a way that sounded casual, but there was always a sharp edge underneath. It was like he was constantly trying to remind me that he felt insecure about the difference between us. But instead of dealing with that insecurity like an adult, he turned it into criticism. He did not like that I made more than him, but he also did not like anything I did to make money. That was the part that made it impossible to win. If I was working remotely and earning well, he mocked me because I was not going to a physical workplace. If I made more money, he made jabs because it bruised his ego. If I was between jobs and doing TaskRabbit to keep money coming in, he made fun of that too. There was no version of me trying, working, earning, or surviving that he did not find a way to criticize. At some point, I was between work. That happens. People lose jobs, change jobs, take time to find the next thing, or have gaps for reasons that are not always in their control. I was not just sitting around refusing to do anything. I was doing TaskRabbit. I was taking tasks, working where I could, doing what needed to be done to keep moving. It was not glamorous, but it was honest work. I was doing something instead of giving up, and he still made a jab about that. That one hit differently because it showed me that his comments were never really about the work itself. They were about me. He wanted to find something to pick at. When I had a good remote job, he mocked that. When I made more money, he mocked or resented that. When I was between work and taking whatever tasks I could get, he mocked that too. So what was I supposed to do? Be successful, but not too successful. Work hard, but not in a way that made him feel small. Earn money, but not more than him. Struggle, but not in a way he could judge. It felt like the rules kept changing because the real goal was not fairness. The real goal was to keep me feeling less confident. Looking back, I think he was deeply insecure, but instead of admitting that, he tried to make it my problem. He could not just say, "I feel bad about where I am in life," or "I wish I made more money," or "I feel stuck." That would have required honesty. Instead, he turned his discomfort outward and made it about me. My job was the problem. My income was the problem. My remote work was the problem. My side work was the problem. Anything I did became something he could use to poke at me. It was exhausting because the jabs were small enough that if I tried to explain them to someone else, I might have sounded dramatic. That is how this kind of thing works. A little comment here, a sarcastic remark there, a joke that is not really a joke, a look, a tone, a comment under his breath. If you react, they act like you are too sensitive. If you do not react, the comments keep coming. Over time, they build up into something heavy. It is not one insult that breaks you. It is the pattern of being made to feel like everything about you is open for criticism. He mocked me for working remote like I was lazy, but remote work still requires discipline. In some ways, it takes even more self-control because no one is standing over your shoulder. You have to manage your time, handle your workload, communicate clearly, and stay focused while your home is right there around you. You have to separate life from work in a place where both exist in the same space. It is not easy just because you are not physically going to an office or job site. But he did not want to understand that because understanding it would mean respecting it. He wanted his work to be seen as harder, more real, more masculine, and more worthy. And maybe his work was physically harder. I never denied that. Plumbing work can be tiring, it can be dirty, it can be demanding. But hard physical labor does not give someone the right to belittle someone else's job. Different kinds of work take different kinds of effort. I did not need to come home covered in dust for my work to matter. I did not need aching knees or a sore back to prove I was contributing. I was making money. I was handling my responsibilities. I was building something for myself. But he could not stand that, especially because I made more than him. That difference seemed to sit between us like a threat. I do not think he knew how to be with a woman who was doing better than him in some ways. Instead of being proud of me or supportive, he seemed resentful. He acted like my success made him smaller. He could have used it as motivation. He could have said, "I want to get licensed. I want to improve my situation. I want to build something better too." But he did not. He just made comments. That is what insecure people often do when they do not want to grow. They try to pull you down to a level where they feel comfortable. They make you feel guilty for succeeding. They mock the way you earn. They chip away at your confidence until you start questioning whether your accomplishments are even worth being proud of. They make your wins feel awkward. They make your hard work feel embarrassing. They make your ambition feel like an insult to them. I wish I had seen it more clearly at the time. I wish I had understood that his jabs were not harmless. They were signs. They were little windows into how he really saw me and how he really saw himself. He was not teasing because he was playful. He was needling me because he felt beneath me and did not know how to deal with it. Instead of becoming better, he wanted me to feel worse. At one point, he outright told me that I was too good for him. I remember hearing it and not taking it the way I should have. At the time, I probably thought it was one of those things people say when they feel insecure and want reassurance. Maybe I thought he needed me to tell him, "No, you're not. Don't say that." Maybe I thought it was vulnerability. Maybe I thought it was him admitting he struggled with self-worth. And because I cared about him, I probably softened. I probably tried to make him feel better. I probably ignored the truth sitting right in front of me. I wish I had realized that he meant it. Because he did mean it. Maybe not in the humble, loving way someone might say it when they are grateful for you. He meant it in a way that came with resentment. He knew I was too good for him. And instead of treating me better because of it, he punished me for it. He knew there was a gap between us, and rather than working on himself, he tried to close the gap by dragging me down. He could see that I had more ambition, more stability, more capability, or more direction, and it bothered him. He did not rise to meet me. He tried to make me smaller. That is the part I understand now. When someone says you are too good for them, sometimes it is not just a sad little comment. Sometimes it is a warning. Sometimes they are telling you exactly how they see the relationship. They are telling you they know they are not showing up the way they should. They know they are not matching your effort, your character, or your standards. And sometimes, instead of changing, they will resent you for being the mirror that shows them what they are not. He was right, though. I was too good for him. I do not say that in a bitter or arrogant way. I say it because it is true. I was too good for someone who mocked my work while benefiting from the fact that I earned money. I was too good for someone who made little comments about my income because he could not handle his own insecurity. I was too good for someone who looked at me doing TaskRabbit between jobs and still found a way to insult me instead of respecting that I was trying. I was too good for someone who had no license, no real sense of accountability, and still had the nerve to act superior because he had to physically go to work. I was too good for someone who could not be happy for me. That is really what it comes down to. A partner should not look at your success and feel threatened. A partner should not see you working from home and act like you are lazy. A partner should not hear that you make more and treat it like an attack on their worth. A partner should not mock your hustle when you are between jobs A partner should be on your team. They should want you to win because your win is not supposed to be their loss. He did not see it that way. To him, everything seemed like a comparison. If I was doing well, then he felt worse. If I had flexibility, then he felt cheated. If I made more, then he felt embarrassed. If I kept working even when things were uncertain, he still had to make sure I did not feel too proud of myself. He could not just let me exist without trying to cut me down. And the sad thing is, for a while, I let those comments matter. I let them get into my head. I probably explained myself when I did not need to. I probably defended remote work. I probably defended my income. I probably defended TaskRabbit. I probably tried to make him understand that I was not looking down on him, even though he was the one looking down on me. I spent energy trying to soothe insecurity that was not mine to fix. But now I can see it more clearly. He was uncomfortable because I was doing better than him in ways he cared about, and he did not have the maturity to handle it. He could have respected me. He could have been proud. He could have worked on getting licensed. He could have built something stable for himself. He could have taken my success as proof that we could have a better life together. Instead, he chose to be small. He chose jabs. He chose mockery. He chose resentment. I think about that version of myself now, working remotely, making more money, trying to keep things going when I was between jobs, and I feel proud of her. She was doing what she had to do. She was not lazy. She was not lesser because her work looked different. She was not embarrassing because she took TaskRabbit gigs during a gap. She was resourceful. She was capable. She was trying. And she deserved someone who could see that. He told me I was too good for him, and I wish I had believed him sooner. I wish I had heard that sentence and understood it as the truth, not as something I needed to comfort him through, because he was right. I was too good for him. Not because he made less money, not because he was a plumber, and not because he worked with his hands. I was too good for him because he treated me poorly. I was too good for the jealousy, the jabs, the insecurity, and the way he tried to make me feel bad for doing well. The money was never the real problem. The job was never the real problem. Remote work was never the real problem. TaskRabbit was never the real problem. The problem was that he could not handle being with someone he knew he did not measure up to. And instead of becoming better, he tried to make me feel smaller. But he was right all along. I was too good for him. And I should have taken him at his word. I had an abortion in a previous relationship, long before this new partner came into my life. It was not something I spoke about lightly. It was not some simple story I could tell without feeling anything. It was one of those experiences that stayed with me, not because I wanted to keep living in the past, but because it had been painful, complicated, and wrapped in so much pressure that I still carried parts of it with me. By the time I had been with this new partner for about a year, he knew about it. He knew the story, or at least he knew enough of it to understand that it was not something to throw in my face during a fight. But we were always fighting. That was the truth of the relationship. It was not peaceful. It was not the kind of love that made me feel safe or understood. It felt like there was always tension under everything, always something waiting to explode. We could have normal days, even good moments, but underneath it all, there was this pattern of conflict that kept coming back. Some couples argue and still have respect for each other. We did not have that kind of arguing. Our fights would turn sharp, and when someone knows your vulnerable places, they can choose to protect them or use them against you. He chose to use mine. During one of those fights, He told me it was my fault we could not have children because I had an abortion. The second he said it, something in me changed. It was not just hurt. It was like my whole body went still because I understood that he had reached for one of the deepest, most painful things I had ever trusted him with, and he used it to wound me. He did not say it by accident. He did not stumble into it. He knew what he was saying. He knew that abortion was not just a random fact from my past. He knew there was grief in it, pressure in it, shame I had worked hard to survive, and a lot of pain I did not always know how to explain. And still, in that moment, he decided it was fair to blame me for something we were struggling with. That really hurt. Because I had not wanted that abortion in the simple, cold way people sometimes imagine. He knew I had been in a terrible situation. I had been in a previous relationship, and the guy did not want to be involved. I was fresh out of rehab. I had no job. I did not have a stable living situation. I was trying to hold myself together and rebuild my life, but everything around me felt fragile. I was not in a place where I had support, security, or any real safety net. I was scared, overwhelmed, and surrounded by pressure from every direction. Even my own mother told me to go through with it. That part still hurt too, because when you are in a vulnerable place, you hope your mother will be the person who helps you breathe and think clearly. Maybe she thought she was helping. Maybe she thought she was being realistic. Maybe she looked at my situation and believed there was no other way. But at the time, it felt like even the person who was supposed to stand by me was pushing me toward a choice I did not truly want. I felt trapped. I felt like the world had already decided for me before I had time to feel what I wanted. I was fresh out of rehab, unstable, scared, and alone in a way that is hard to describe unless you have lived it. So yes, I had the abortion. But it was not because I was careless or heartless. It was not because I did not care about children. It was not because motherhood meant nothing to me. It was because I felt cornered. The man involved did not want the responsibility. I did not have a job. I did not have a stable home. I was newly sober or newly out of rehab and trying to survive my own life. Everyone around me seemed to be telling me that this was what had to happen. I felt immense pressure to get it done, and I carried that pressure long after the procedure was over. That was why his comment cut so deep. He was not only blaming me for us not having children. He was taking a painful decision from my past and turning it into a punishment. He made it sound like I had ruined myself, like I had broken something, like I had destroyed my own chance to be a mother. He said it in the middle of a fight, but the words were bigger than the argument. They told me what kind of person he was when he wanted to hurt me. They told me how he saw me. They told me he was willing to take my pain and use it as evidence against me. When he said that, I knew. I knew this would not be the person I married. I knew this would not be the person I had children with. Before that moment, maybe there had still been some part of me trying to imagine a future. Maybe I thought, if we could stop fighting, if we could understand each other better, if things changed, maybe we could become something stronger. But after he said that, I could not imagine giving him a deeper place in my life. I could not imagine standing beside him at an altar. I could not imagine carrying his child. I could not imagine trusting him with the most vulnerable parts of motherhood, pregnancy, or family. Because a man who would say that during a fight is not safe, a man who would blame you for an abortion he knew you were pressured into, is not someone you can trust with your body, your history, your grief, or your future. A man who uses your pain as a weapon is not someone you build a family with. Families require tenderness. Children require patience. Pregnancy requires emotional safety. Marriage requires respect. And in that moment, He showed me he did not have what I needed. The cruel irony was that if we were talking about why we had not gotten pregnant, it was probably not because of me at all. He had released inside me over 100 times, and I never got pregnant. Over and over again, nothing happened. At the time, he wanted so badly to be a father, and maybe that made him angry. Maybe it scared him. Maybe it made him feel less like the man he wanted to be. But instead of looking at himself honestly, he blamed me. It was easier for him to point at my past than face the possibility that he might be the reason. That was another part that made his words so unfair. He acted like my abortion had somehow made me unable to have children, but there was no proof of that. There was only his anger and his need to blame someone. He took a painful memory and turned it into a diagnosis he was not qualified to make. He decided I was the problem because that protected him from having to wonder if he was. That is what people do when their ego cannot handle reality. They search for someone else to carry the shame, and I carried enough shame already. I did not need his. For a long time, I think I believed the worst things people said about me because part of me was already hurting. When you have been through addiction, rehab, stability, a difficult relationship, and an abortion you did not truly want, you can become vulnerable to blame. You can start thinking maybe everything is your fault. Maybe you broke your own life. Maybe you made too many mistakes to deserve a good future. So when someone cruel says something that lines up with the pain already inside you, it can hit harder than it should. It can feel like they are confirming your deepest fear. But he was wrong. He was completely wrong. Now I am married, and I have 2 beautiful children. That truth means more to me than anything he ever said. My children are living proof that I was never broken. I was never the issue. My body was not ruined. My ability to become a mother was not destroyed because of one painful decision I made under pressure. In a terrible season of my life, I can get pregnant. I did get pregnant. I carried children. I became a mother. I have the family I once feared I might never have, and that changes the way I look back on him. It makes his accusation seem even uglier, but also smaller. At the time, his words felt powerful because I was still in that relationship and still carrying old wounds. But now I can see them for what they were. They were not truth. They were not insight. They were not a real explanation. They were a weapon. They were the words of a man who wanted to hurt me because he could not handle his own pain, fear, or possible infertility. I truly believe he was infertile. I cannot prove it, and maybe I never will, but I believe it. He wanted so badly to be a father. And yet with all those chances, I never got pregnant with him. Then I went on to marry someone else and have 2 children. That tells me what I need to know. I was never the reason we did not have a baby together. He wanted to make me the problem because he could not face the idea that the issue might have been him all along. That is one of the strange ways life can reveal the truth later. In the moment, you may not be able to defend yourself fully. You may not have the proof. You may only have your hurt and your instinct that something is wrong. But years later, life gives you evidence. Life shows you that the cruel thing someone said was false. Life shows you that they were projecting, blaming, lying, or speaking from insecurity. And suddenly you can look back and say, no, I was not the problem. I was never the problem. I think about how badly he wanted to be a father, and there is a part of me that feels nothing but certainty that he will never get that because of who he was and because of what I believe about him. Maybe that sounds harsh, but he was harsh with me. He took the most painful thing he knew about me and used it against me. He blamed me for something that was not my fault. He tried to make me feel like I had destroyed our future, when in reality, He was not someone I should have had a future with at all. When he said those words, he thought he was hurting me in a way that would put me beneath him. But what he really did was give me clarity. He showed me that he was not husband material. He showed me that he was not father material, at least not with me. He showed me that if I ever had children, I needed their father to be someone gentler, safer, and stronger than him. I needed someone who would not use my past as ammunition. I needed someone who would protect my heart when I was vulnerable, not attack it. And that is what I eventually found. I found a different life. I found marriage. I found motherhood. I found proof that the future he tried to make me feel unworthy of was still waiting for me, just not with him. My children are beautiful, and every time I look at them, I know his words did not define me. He did not get to decide what my body could do. He did not get to decide whether I was worthy of being a mother. He did not get to turn my past into a curse. The abortion I had before him was part of my life, but it was not the end of my story. It was a painful chapter from a time when I was scared, unstable, unsupported, and under pressure. It was not a reason to blame me. It was not proof that I was damaged. It was not something a loving partner would ever throw in my face. A loving partner would have understood the weight of it. A loving partner would have held that information with care. A loving partner would have known that some wounds are not to be touched unless you are trying to help them heal. He was not that person. He was someone who wanted a child badly, but when he did not get what he wanted, he blamed the woman in front of him. He was someone who took no responsibility for the fact that after so many times, nothing happened. He was someone who preferred to believe my past was the problem instead of considering that his body might be. He was someone who could not handle the truth, so he made up a cruel version that put all the pain on me. But his version was not reality. Reality is that I can get pregnant. Reality is that I am married now. Reality is that I have 2 beautiful children. Reality is that I was not broken, cursed, or ruined. Reality is that I was a woman who had gone through something painful and deserved compassion, not blame. Reality is that he exposed himself as someone I could never trust with marriage or children. When I look back on that fight now, I still remember the sting of what he said. I remember how it felt to hear him blame me for something so personal. I remember the way my heart sank because I knew he had crossed a line he could never uncross. But I also remember that moment as the moment I knew. I knew he would not be my husband. I knew he would not be the father of my children. I knew that no matter how much we had been through, there was something in him I could not build a life with. And I was right. He wanted to be a father so badly, but he will never be the father of my children. He does not get to share this life with me. He does not get to enjoy the family he tried to make me believe I could not have. He does not get to rewrite my story. He does not get to call me the problem when my life has already proven otherwise. I was never the issue. It was always him. I was with him for 3 years, and during that time, I lived with his family. When I look back now, I can see there were many moments that should have told me something was wrong. But the first time I truly knew something in my gut was off was because of one comment. It was not even a big dramatic situation at first. It started with something simple, something that should have been harmless. But his reaction and then the way he treated me afterward shattered something in me. We were young. I was 23, and I honestly did not understand myself or relationships the way I do now. I thought love meant trusting someone fully, even when maybe I should have been more careful. We were together, We lived in the same home with his family, and I thought that meant we were serious. I thought we were building something, even if we were not married. I thought we were partners. I thought I knew him. I thought if something serious happened, we would handle it together. We had unprotected sex all the time, pretty much every day. He would finish inside me, and I was on birth control, so at the time I convinced myself it was fine. Looking back, I can say I was a dumb 23-year-old, not because I deserved what happened, but because I trusted too much. I trusted the birth control. I trusted him. I trusted that if we were taking that kind of risk together, even with protection through birth control, he understood that there was still a small chance of pregnancy. I trusted that he knew intimacy came with responsibility. I trusted that he cared about me enough to face life with me if something unexpected happened. One day, I was bloated. It was one of those normal body things that happens, and I made a joke about being pregnant. It was innocent. I was not announcing anything. I was not trying to trap him. I was not testing him in some deep way. I was just bloated and joking. Probably the way a lot of women joke when their stomach feels swollen and uncomfortable. I thought it was a light moment. I thought maybe he would laugh or roll his eyes or say something like, "Don't even joke about that," in a normal way. Instead, he looked at me and said, "If you were pregnant, I would leave you." That sentence hit me so hard, I did not even know how to react at first. It was like everything in the room changed. A second before, I had been making a silly joke. Then suddenly, I was standing there with the person I loved, me that if the natural consequence of what we were doing every day happened, he would abandon me. Not we would figure it out. Not I would be scared. Not I don't feel ready. Not even I don't know what I would do. Just I would leave you. I could not understand how he could say that to me. We were together for years. We were living together. We were having unprotected sex every day. He was finishing inside me. He knew I was on birth control, but birth control is not magic. It can fail. People know that. Adults know that. If he was that certain he would leave me if I became pregnant, then why was he comfortable taking that risk with my body every single day? Why was he okay enjoying the closeness, the pleasure, and the trust, but not okay accepting even the smallest part of the responsibility that could come with it? I had an emotional reaction because of course I did. I was hurt. I was shocked. I was angry. I felt unsafe. I felt like the floor had disappeared under me. Suddenly, the relationship did not feel like a partnership anymore. It felt like I had been the only one thinking we were in this together. He had just told me that if something happened to my body because of something we were both doing, he would leave me to deal with it alone. We got into a huge fight. I was upset, and instead of understanding why, he acted like I was insane. He acted like my reaction was the problem. He treated me like I was being dramatic, irrational, or crazy for being hurt by what he said. That made everything worse. It would have already been painful if he had said it, and then immediately realized how cruel it sounded. But he did not do that. He stood by it in the moment. He let me cry, argue, explain, and hurt, and he made me feel like I was the one who had lost control. That is the part that still bothers me when I think about it. It was not only the sentence. It was the way he made me defend my pain. I should not have had to explain why that comment was devastating. I should not have had to convince him that telling your girlfriend you would leave her if she got pregnant is cruel, especially when you are actively participating in the very thing that could cause pregnancy. I should not have had to stand there and make a case for why I deserved basic care. But I did. I tried to explain. I tried to make him understand that I was not upset over nothing. I tried to show him that his words made me feel disposable, but he kept acting like I was overreacting. He made it seem like I had created the problem by having feelings. That kind of response can mess with your head. You start wondering if maybe you are too sensitive. You start asking yourself if you misunderstood. You start trying to calm yourself down, not because the other person is right, but because they have made your reaction feel embarrassing. Inside, though, I was shattered, because I knew what he had said. I knew what it meant. He had shown me that his love had conditions I had not known about. He had shown me that I was safe with him only as long as nothing difficult happened. He had shown me that he could take risks with me and then plan to abandon me if those risks turned into consequences. He had shown me that if I needed him in a serious way, he might not be there. That changed something. Even if we stayed together after that, something in me had heard him clearly. I may not have left right away, but my body remembered, my heart remembered, my trust changed. You cannot easily feel safe with someone after they tell you they would leave you in one of the most vulnerable situations possible. Pregnancy is not a small thing. It changes your body, your emotions, your future, your choices, and your whole life. The idea that he would walk away while I carried the weight of it alone made me see him differently. We stayed together, and a year later, we revisited that conversation. Time had passed, but the wound was still there. Some comments do not fade just because months go by. They sit in the back of your mind. You may not talk about them every day, but they show up in little ways. You remember them during arguments. You remember them during intimate moments. You remember them when you are late on your period or when your body feels strange. You remember them when you think about the future. When we talked about it again, he finally admitted something that made me even more confused and hurt. He said, "I knew I was wrong for saying it when I said it. I just couldn't backtrack once you were upset. It's just something I felt like I should say. That made no sense to me." He knew he was wrong when he said it, but instead of stopping, apologizing, or correcting himself, he chose to keep hurting me because I was upset. He knew the words were wrong, but his pride mattered more. He knew he had caused pain, but once I reacted, he felt like he could not backtrack, as if my hurt made it impossible for him to do the right thing. As if an apology only counts before someone has feelings about what you said. As if he would rather let me believe he meant something cruel than admit he had gone too far. And then he said it was just something he felt like he should say. That part made it even worse. Why should he say it? What was the purpose? Was it a warning? Was it a threat? Was it his way of making sure I knew I would be alone if anything happened? Was it his way of distancing himself from responsibility before there was even a real situation to face? I still do not know. It made no sense then, and it makes sense now, except that maybe he wanted to make his position clear without caring what it did to me. The fact that he knew it was wrong and still refused to soften it in the moment told me so much about his character. People say hurtful things sometimes. People panic. People speak too fast. People get scared and say things badly. But when you know you have hurt someone and you still choose to stand there, acting like they are crazy, instead of saying, "I am sorry, that came out wrong," that is not just a mistake. That is ego. That is immaturity. That is emotional cowardice. He cared more about not backing down than about repairing the damage he had done. He cared more about winning the moment than about making me feel safe. He watched me break down over something he knew was wrong, and instead of reaching for me, he defended himself. That is not love in any healthy sense. That is not partnership. That is not someone you can trust with the softest parts of yourself. Looking back, I think that conversation planted a fear in me that lasted much longer than the relationship. It taught me that someone could share my bed, share my life, live under the same roof with me, and still not truly be on my side. It taught me that intimacy does not always mean safety. It taught me that a person can enjoy closeness with you while secretly planning to leave if closeness creates responsibility. It taught me that I could be deeply attached to someone who might abandon me at the exact moment I needed him most. We broke up 5 years ago, and I have not been in a relationship since. Sometimes I think people hear that and assume I am bitter or stuck, but it is more complicated than that. It is not that I never wanted love again. It is not that I never felt lonely. It is not that I stopped believing every person in the world could be good. It is that after a relationship like that, trust does not come easily. You learn to question what people mean when they say they care about you. You learn to listen for what happens when things are inconvenient. You learn that the real test of love is not how someone acts when everything is easy, but how they act when life gets serious. For me, that comment became a symbol of the whole relationship. It showed me that I had been more invested in the idea of us than he was in the reality of caring for me. I loved him. I lived with him and his family. I built parts of my life around him. I believed we were serious. But when a harmless pregnancy joke came up, his first instinct was to tell me he would leave. He did not say he would be scared. He did not say he was not ready. He said he would leave me. That is not something you forget. It also made me think differently about responsibility. If a man is not prepared for the possible consequences of unprotected sex, then he should not be having it that way. If he knows he would abandon a woman if she became pregnant, then he should not be finishing inside her every day and relying on her birth control as if the responsibility belongs only to her. He was willing to enjoy my body, but he was not willing to stand beside me if my body became pregnant because of what we both chose to do. That imbalance is cruel. It puts all the risk on the woman while the man keeps the option to disappear. And maybe that was what hurt most. He made me feel like I would be left holding the consequences alone. He made me feel like my body was mine only when it came time to suffer, but ours when it came time for pleasure. He could be part of the act, but not part of the outcome. He could take the risk with me, but then blame me for being emotional when I asked what that risk meant. I wish I had been stronger then. I wish I had heard that sentence and walked away. I wish I had understood that love should not make you feel abandoned before anything has even happened. But I was young, and I loved him, and I did not have enough self-worth to see that his words were not something I needed to work through. They were something I needed to pay attention to. Now I understand that my emotional reaction was not insane. It was completely normal. Anyone with a heart would have been hurt. Anyone who trusted their partner would have felt betrayed by that response. I was not crazy for being upset. I was reacting to a cruel statement from someone who was supposed to care about me. The fact that he acted like I was insane does not mean I was. It means he did not want to take responsibility for the pain he caused. 5 years later, I still have not been in another relationship. Maybe part of me is still protecting myself. Maybe part of me is scared of giving someone that much access to my life again. Maybe part of me remembers what it felt like to be so sure I was loved, only to hear that I would be left alone if life became difficult. I know not everyone is like him, but knowing that in your mind is different from feeling safe enough to try again, I think that is one of the lasting effects of being hurt that way. The relationship ends, but the lesson stays. You become careful. You become slower to trust. You stop finding certain jokes funny. You stop ignoring comments that reveal too much. You pay attention when someone talks about responsibility, children, illness, stress, money, or commitment. You understand that the small moments can reveal the biggest truths. That day I made an innocent pregnancy joke because I was bloated. I expected maybe a laugh, maybe a normal reaction, maybe nothing serious at all. Instead, I learned that the man I had been building a life around would leave me if I became pregnant. I learned that he could hurt me, watch me react, and then punish me emotionally for being hurt. I learned a year later that he knew he was wrong and still chose not to backtrack because his pride mattered more than my feelings. It shattered me because it showed me I was not safe with him. And maybe that is why I have been single for so long since. Because once you learn how unsafe love can feel with the wrong person, you do not rush to hand your heart to someone new. You take your time, you protect your peace. You learn slowly that being alone is better than being with someone who would abandon you at the first real test. My ex-husband cheated on me with a woman who was HIV positive. Even now, all these years later, writing that sentence still makes my stomach tighten because it was not just cheating. Cheating would have been painful enough on its own. Cheating would have been betrayal, humiliation, heartbreak, anger, and grief. But this was something else on top of all that. He did not just risk our marriage. He risked my health. He risked my future. He risked the life I had built, the life I thought I was living. And in a way, he risked a piece of our child's childhood too. He made one selfish choice after another, and I was the one who had to live inside the fear that came after it. When I found out, it felt like my whole body went cold. There are moments in life when information does not enter your mind slowly. It hits you all at once. 1 second, you are a person standing in your normal life, and the next second, the floor is gone. That is what it felt like. I remember the shock first. It was not even anger in the beginning. It was shock so strong that I almost felt numb. My mind kept trying to reject it. This could not be real. This could not be my husband. This could not be my marriage. This could not be happening to me while I had a child to think about. Then the fear came. It was not a normal fear. It was not the kind of fear you feel after an argument or a bad day. It was deep, physical, and constant. It settled into my chest and stayed there. I was terrified that he had exposed me to something that could change my entire life. I was terrified of what that could mean for me. I was terrified of what it could mean for my child, even though my child had nothing to do with his choices. Once you become a parent, every disaster in your life immediately turns into a question of how it will affect your child. Would I be okay? Would I be able to raise my child? Would my child lose the version of me they knew? Would I spend the rest of my life carrying the consequences of something I never agreed to? I divorced him immediately. There was no long debate in my heart after that. Some betrayals are so complete that they leave no room for repair. I knew people might have opinions. People always have opinions when a marriage ends. Some say you should work it out. Some say everyone makes mistakes. Some say divorce is too extreme. But to me, this was not a mistake. This was not one careless moment that could be apologized away. He had made choices that put me in danger, and I could not look at him the same way again. I could not share a bed with him. I could not trust his words. I could not trust his body. I could not trust his judgment, and without trust, there was nothing left to save. So I left. I moved away with our child because staying near him felt impossible. I needed distance. I needed space to breathe. I needed a place where I could build some kind of safety again, even if that safety was fragile. Leaving was not easy. Divorce is never as simple as people make it sound. There are papers, money problems, living arrangements, custody issues, family opinions, and emotional wreckage. But when I looked at my child, I knew I had to choose survival. I had to choose a future that was not built around a man who had already shown me how little he cared about the consequences of his actions. After I moved away, the real punishment began, and it was not legal or public. It was private. It was the testing. It was the waiting. It was the fear that followed me around like a shadow. I spent 6 years testing and living in fear. 6 years is a long time. People say 6 years quickly, like it is just a number. But when you live through it day by day, it is endless. It is birthdays. It is holidays. It is school events. It is grocery shopping. It is trying to sleep at night. It is waking up and remembering everything before your feet even touch the floor. It is getting blood drawn and then waiting for results. It is telling yourself to stay calm and then feeling your heart race anyway. It is reading too much, thinking too much, imagining too much. It is convincing yourself you are fine 1 hour and then panicking the next. Every test felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Even when I was told things looked okay, fear did not leave easily. Logic and fear do not always live in the same place. A doctor can tell you one thing, a test can say one thing, but trauma keeps whispering in the background. What if something was missed? What if something changes? What if I am not safe yet? What if my life is about to become something I cannot handle? I knew I was doing what I had to do, but each appointment pulled me back into the betrayal. Each test reminded me that I was there because of him, because of what he did, because he decided his desire mattered more than my safety. During those years, I could not date. I did not have the emotional room for it. People might not understand that, especially if they have never lived with that kind of fear. They might think that after a divorce, you should move on, meet someone, rebuild your confidence, and start over. But I did not feel free. I felt contaminated by fear, even though I had done nothing wrong. I felt like my body was a place of uncertainty. I felt like my future had a question mark over it. How do you go out to dinner with someone and laugh like a normal person when part of your mind is waiting for test results? How do you let someone touch you when the last person you trusted had turned intimacy into danger? How do you explain that your ex-husband's betrayal did not just break your heart, it made your own body feel unsafe to you? I could not do it. I could not open that door. Dating felt impossible. Trust felt impossible. Desire felt far away, like something that belonged to a version of me who no longer existed. Even if someone kind had come along, I do not think I would have known what to do with kindness. I was too guarded, too tired, too afraid. I had a child to raise, and that became my focus. I poured my energy into being a parent, into keeping our life stable, into making sure my child had love and routine and safety. On the outside, I probably looked like I was handling things. I did what needed to be done. I got up, I worked. I cared for my child. I paid bills, I made meals. I kept going. But inside, I was carrying something heavy all the time. There were nights when I would lie awake and think about how unfair it was. I was not the one who cheated. I was not the one who lied. I was not the one who took risks. Yet I was the one living with the consequences. He got to become my ex-husband, a person from the past, but the fear he created stayed with me in the present. That was one of the hardest parts to accept. Divorce removed him from my daily life, but it did not remove what he had done to me. It did not erase the appointments, the waiting, the panic, or the way I saw myself afterward. I was angry too, of course. Sometimes the anger was the only thing that made sense. I was angry that he had made me feel powerless. I was angry that he had taken something as personal as my health and turned it into a risk without my consent. I was angry that he had made me afraid to date, afraid to trust, afraid to relax. I was angry that he had taken years from me, not just months, years. Years when I should have been healing, growing, maybe falling in love again, or at least feeling at peace. Instead, I was living in a kind of invisible waiting room, always waiting for reassurance that never fully reached the part of me that had been damaged. And then there was the shame, even though I know I had no reason to feel ashamed. That is another cruel thing betrayal can do. It puts shame on the wrong person. I did nothing wrong, but I still felt embarrassed. Embarrassed that this had happened in my marriage. Embarrassed that I had trusted him. Embarrassed that my life had become something I would not have known how to explain casually. When people asked why I divorced, I did not always want to tell the truth. The truth was too personal, too painful, too loaded. It made people react in ways I did not always want to deal with. Some people would look shocked. Some would ask questions. Some would become too quiet. Some might judge without meaning to. So I carried a lot of it privately. As my child grew, I tried to keep my pain from becoming their burden. That was not always easy. Children notice more than adults think they do. They may not understand the details, but they can feel stress in a home. They can sense when a parent is scared or sad or distracted. I did my best to protect my child from the worst of it. I wanted their childhood to be more than what their father had done. I wanted them to feel loved, not dragged into adult pain. I wanted them to grow up knowing stability, even though mine had been shattered. Years passed. Test after test came back okay. Eventually, the thing I feared most did not happen. Neither of us is positive. My child is an adult now. Life moved forward in the way life does, even when you think it never will. There were ordinary days again. There were milestones. There were moments of laughter. There were holidays and changes in all the small pieces that make up a life. From the outside, someone might hear the outcome and think, well, then it ended fine. Nobody got infected. The child grew up. It was a long time ago. You are okay now. But that is not how trauma works. Yes, it was a long time ago. Yes, neither of us is positive. Yes, my child is grown now. Yes, I survived it. But I cannot forget it. I cannot forget what it felt like to be betrayed in a way that touched every part of my life. I cannot forget the fear that sat with me for years. I cannot forget the testing. I cannot forget how lonely it was. I cannot forget how much of my life was shaped by a choice I did not make. People sometimes think forgetting is the same as healing. It is not. Some things do not disappear just because time passes. They become quieter, maybe. They stop controlling every single day. They no longer sit at the front of your mind every hour. But they are still part of your history. They still live somewhere in your body. A certain memory, a certain conversation, a certain medical form, a certain mention of cheating or disease or trust can bring it back. Not always as strongly as before, but enough to remind you that it happened. What I struggle with most is not only that he cheated, it is that he took away my sense of safety. Before him, I believed that marriage meant certain things. I believed that a partner might hurt your feelings, might disappoint you, might fail you in ordinary ways, but I did not think the person who promised to love me would put me at risk like that. I did not think I would have to protect myself from the person I was married to. After that, the world looked different. Love looked different. Trust looked different. I also think about how one person's selfishness can ripple through so many years. He may have made his choices in secret, in moments that probably felt temporary to him. But the consequences were not temporary for me. They followed me through 6 years of fear, and beyond. They affected how I saw men, relationships, intimacy, my own body, and my future. They affected how I moved through the world. That is the part some people do not understand. A betrayal can be over for the person who caused it long before it is over for the person who was hurt. I have tried to make peace with it in my own way. I know the facts. I know that I am not positive. I know my child is not positive. I know I made the right choice by leaving. I know I protected myself and my child as best as I could. I know I was strong even when I did not feel strong. I know I survived something that could have broken me completely. But knowing all of that does not erase the memory. It does not make the fear retroactively harmless. It does not give me back those 6 years. Sometimes I think the reason I cannot forget it is because forgetting would feel like letting him off the hook. It would feel like pretending it was just an old bad chapter, when in reality it changed me. I do not walk around thinking about him every day. He does not own my life now. But what he did remains one of those wounds that left a scar. A scar is not an open injury anymore, but it is still proof that something happened there. It still changes the skin. It still reminds you. I am grateful that the worst outcome did not happen. I am deeply grateful. I know it could have gone another way, and I do not take that lightly. But gratitude and pain can exist at the same time. Relief and anger can exist at the same time. Survival and grief can exist at the same time. I can be thankful that neither my child nor I are positive and still be devastated by the years of fear he forced on me. I can be glad my child grew up and became an adult and still mourn the peace I lost when they were young. I can know I am safe now and still remember the time when I did not feel safe at all. That is the truth of it. It was a long time ago, but time does not make every memory soft. Some memories stay sharp because they changed the way you understand trust. My ex-husband cheated on me with a woman who was HIV positive, and I divorced him immediately. I moved away with our child. I spent 6 years testing, waiting, fearing, and unable to date because the betrayal had reached too deeply into my life. Now my child is grown. Neither of us is positive. The danger passed, the years passed, my life moved on, but I still cannot forget it.
So that's where we'll stop tonight. Before you go, remember this. Every story you just heard was real. Real people, real nights, and none of them saw it coming. If that got to you the way it gets to most people, do one thing before you leave. Hit subscribe. I post new stories all the time, and I don't want you to miss them. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.